Blood Feast. Released in 1963, Herschel Gordon Lewis's Blood Feast didn't just push boundaries, it tore them apart with a meat cleaver. Often hailed as the first splatter film, it turned stomachs and changed the game for low-budget horror. The plot? An unhinged caterer possessed by an ancient Egyptian goddess murders women to prepare a sacrificial banquet. Subtle it was not. Critics panned it as amateurish and grotesque, but that didn't stop it from filling grindhouse theaters nationwide. Some rumors even suggest that drive-in owners handed out barf bags as a marketing gimmick. Whether it worked or not, audiences remembered. Shot in lurid color with a budget of just over $24,000, the film's crude gore effects, tongues ripped out, limbs hacked off, became its selling point. Lewis himself later admitted the acting was terrible, but the blood was the star. Blood Feast didn't just open the floodgates for gore, it soaked the screen in it, setting the tone for a decade of exploitation cinema that followed. It wasn't art, but it was unforgettable. The Sadist. In 1963, The Sadist hit theaters with a level of raw aggression few films dared to touch. Directed by James Landis, reportedly in his first feature-length effort, the film was a stripped-down black-and-white pressure cooker that thrust viewers into a relentless showdown with a pistol-wielding maniac. Arch Hall Jr., better known at the time for his appearances in his father's low-budget musical romps, took a hard left turn as the unhinged Charlie Tibbs, a character loosely based on real-life spree killer Charles Starkweather. The resemblance was no accident. Starkweather's killing spree with teenage accomplice Caril Ann Fugate had gripped headlines just 5 years earlier, and The Sadist leaned into that notoriety with disturbing precision. Rumors suggest the film was shot on the outskirts of Los Angeles, possibly in a real junkyard, adding to its grimy authenticity. The cinematography, handled by a then unknown Vilmo Zsigmond, gave the film a jarring, documentary-like tension that some later compared to the early works of Tobe Hooper. While there's no confirmed link, speculation lingers that the film's claustrophobic setup and psychological cruelty may have influenced the Texas Chainsaw Massacre over a decade later. Journalists of that period largely overlooked it or dismissed it as exploitative trash, but genre fans saw something else, an early no-frills blueprint for the modern horror film. Over the years, it clawed its way into cult status, praised for its nerve-fraying intensity and refusal to play nice. For a film made on a budget of roughly $33,000, The Sadist didn't just toe the line, it stomped all over it. The Touch of Her Flesh. Released in 1967, Michael Findley's The Touch of Her Flesh didn't just dabble in sleaze, it practically weaponized it. The plot follows a weapons dealer turned serial killer after a car crash, triggered by his wife's affair, leaves him blind. But what played out on screen was only half the spectacle. Findley cast himself as the deranged lead and his real-life wife, Roberta Findley, as the cheating spouse, a move that blurred the line between exploitation and exhibitionism. Film historian Bill Landis once described the Findleys as boundary pushers in underground cinema, a title few would dispute. Their murder scenes, featuring mannequins, lingerie models, and low-budget shock, became a blueprint for grindhouse aesthetics. Critics dismissed the film as gutter trash, but it found a loyal audience in the exploitation circuit. Its unexpected success spawned two sequels in 1968, The Curse of Her Flesh and The Kiss of Her Flesh, each more unhinged than the last. Some praised the trilogy's no-holds-barred energy, while others slammed it for its depiction of violence against women. Stories still circulate about the trilogy's cult appeal. Some suspect it wasn't the quality, but the sheer audacity that kept audiences coming back. While direct influence on filmmakers like Abel Ferrara or Wes Craven remains debated, the Findley's raw, anarchic tone echoed through the darker corners of horror for decades. In the end, the Flesh trilogy didn't just push buttons, it sold tickets by smashing them. Olga's House of Shame. In 1964, Olga's House of Shame slithered into New York's grindhouse theaters with all the subtlety of a cattle prod. Directed by Joseph P. Marr, this third entry in the infamous Olga series starred Audrey Campbell as the cold-blooded warden of a women's prison where control came through violence, degradation, and drug-fueled manipulation. The film's gritty documentary-style visuals weren't accidental. Many believe they were designed to mimic newsreels, giving the sadism a disturbingly real edge. While mainstream outlets dismissed it as bottom-tier sleaze, the film quickly garnered an underground fan base in certain underground circles. It reportedly faced censorship in some American cities, but that only fueled its notoriety. According to film historian Eric Schaefer, exploitation cinema often turned outrage into marketing gold, with scandal acting as a built-in billboard. Campbell's icy performance as Olga, part dominatrix, part bureaucrat, sparked fascination in certain fetish communities, and others believe it helped shape early visual cues in underground kink cinema. Legends even tease that the character became a kind of blueprint for later BDSM-themed films, despite the movie's zero interest in nuance or consent. No awards, no apologies, just raw, unapologetic provocation that still baffles and fascinates cult film fans. The Thrill Killers. The Thrill Killers crashed into drive-in theaters in 1964 with the energy of a fever dream and the budget of a student film. Directed by Ray Dennis Steckler, who also starred under the name Cash Flag, it fused horror, crime, and pure exploitation into a jagged, low-budget spectacle. The plot centered on a band of escaped psychiatric patients wreaking havoc across Los Angeles, but the chaos didn't stop at the script. Steckler reportedly shot scenes guerrilla style, staging violent sequences in public spaces without permits, sometimes with real bystanders unknowingly caught in the frame. Film historian Rob Craig once described Steckler's work as teetering between amateurism and audacity, and this film delivered both in spades. Its erratic editing, tonal whiplash, and surprisingly graphic violence for the time led mainstream critics to dismiss it as incoherent trash. But fans saw something different. Some have retroactively labeled it a proto-slasher, noting that it predates Halloween by over a decade. The film's raw aesthetic and unpredictable pacing have since earned it cult status among exploitation purists. And while Steckler often blamed budget constraints for the madness, others speculate his style was an intentional jab at Hollywood polish. Whether out of necessity or rebellion, The Thrill Killers stands as a snapshot of 60s exploitation at its most unfiltered, messy, manic, and impossible to ignore. Scum of the Earth. In 1963, Scum of the Earth emerged as a strange turning point in exploitation cinema. Directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, better known for launching the gore genre with Blood Feast, this earlier black and white feature took a different path. Instead of blood, it trafficked in degradation. Often cited as one of the first roughies, it blurred the line between moral panic and calculated provocation. The story, involving a young woman pressured into posing for increasingly explicit photos, was framed as a cautionary tale, but few were fooled. The marketing leaned hard into outrage, with rumors claiming the tagline, "The most shocking film of our generation," was slapped on posters to bait censors and lure curious crowds. Others theorized Lewis and producer David F. Friedman weren't just testing limits, they were daring the system to respond. At the time, the motion picture production code was still technically active, but its grip was slipping. That opened the door for films like this to sneak into grindhouse theaters, especially in cities like Chicago and New York. Shot quickly and cheaply, the film's raw, almost documentary-like visuals weren't just a creative choice, they were survival tactics. With no budget for polish, Lewis leaned into the dirt. Film scholar Eric Schaefer has written extensively about this era, noting that the roughy subgenre marked a shift where exploitation cinema began fusing sexual tension with psychological menace. While Scum of the Earth might seem tame today, it helped set the tone for harsher titles that followed, like Olga's House of Shame and The Defilers. Legends tease that Lewis knew exactly what he was doing, selling sleaze under the mask of morality, all while rewriting the rules of what could be shown on screen. Mudhoney. Russ Meyer's Mudhoney, released in 1965, didn't just toe the exploitation line, it steamrolled right past it. Set in a crumbling rural town and dripping with themes of religious extremism, lust, and violence, the film was a chaotic cocktail that pushed boundaries even by grindhouse standards. Meyer, already notorious for films that reveled in excess, financed this one himself. Many guess he was venting his frustrations with the sanitized constraints of Hollywood, crafting Mudhoney as a defiant middle finger to studio polish. While no direct link to Erskine Caldwell's God's Little Acre has been confirmed, the parallels in tone and setting have fueled comparisons for decades. The film tanked commercially, vanishing quickly from theaters, but later clawed its way into cult circles thanks to its unapologetic sleaze and jarring moral commentary. Critics didn't know what to make of it. Was it trash, art, or both? Legends tease that Meyer privately considered it his most personal project, even if audiences weren't ready to follow him down that rabbit hole. Something Weird. Released theatrically in 1967, Something Weird took a sledgehammer to conventional storytelling. Directed by exploitation icon Herschel Gordon Lewis, the film threw together a disfigured psychic, a seductive witch, a shadowy government agent, and a flurry of LSD-fueled hallucinations, then dared audiences to make sense of it. Contemporary reviewers labeled it incoherent, but Lewis leaned into the chaos, describing his filmmaking style as deliberately provocative and disorienting. While major studios tiptoed around drug culture, Lewis charged in, flooding the screen with garish color filters, strobe effects, and jarring edits that mirrored the disjointed nature of a psychedelic trip. Various cinema researchers proposed the film's erratic structure was a veiled jab at Cold War-era paranoia over mind control and government experimentation, though Lewis never addressed such theories directly. Underground audiences didn't seem to care about the plot, or lack thereof. The film found a home on the grindhouse circuit, where its unfiltered blend of horror, psychedelia, and exploitation turned heads. Though the midnight movie phenomenon would peak in the 70s, Something Weird laid early groundwork for the acid horror niche, influencing future titles that use psychedelic imagery not for beauty, but for sheer, nerve-frying dread. Its legacy is not in coherence or craft, but in how gleefully it shattered every cinematic rule in sight. The Wild Wild World of Jane Mansfield. Released in 1968, The Wild Wild World of Jane Mansfield hit theaters about a year after the actress's sudden death in a June 29, 1967 car crash. Originally pitched as a globe-trotting look at sexual liberation, the film quickly veered into softcore territory, packed with stage stripteases and stitched together using Mansfield's pre-recorded narration. After her death, producers reworked the footage, adding tabloid clippings, funeral scenes, and scandal-heavy headlines, turning what began as a pseudo-documentary into a posthumous exploitation showcase. Variety and other critics slammed the result as shameless and opportunistic. Still, the film struck gold in grindhouse circuits, where its lurid cocktail of voyeurism, celebrity, and tragedy drew packed houses. The boundary between documentary and exploitation wasn't just crossed, it was flattened. Some surmised the re-edit was a rushed move to cash in on the media frenzy surrounding Mansfield's death. Whether calculated or not, the film cemented her legacy, not only as a 1950s sex symbol, but also as a tragic emblem of Hollywood's obsession with fame, flesh, and spectacle. The Naked Kiss. In 1964, Samuel Fuller dropped The Naked Kiss like a cinematic grenade. The film opens with a prostitute attacking her pimp and tearing off a wig to reveal a shaved head, a jarring image that set the tone for what was to come. Fuller, a former crime reporter, wasn't just chasing shock, he was dragging the skeletons out of America's closet. Constance Towers, a trained film and stage actress, played Kelly with such conviction that her performance bulldozed past the film's exploitation label. The story spirals into darker territory when a beloved town philanthropist is exposed as a predator, an ending so disturbing that the film faced censorship and was trimmed in several markets. Some even whisper that Fuller deliberately baited censors to make a statement about moral decay. Marketed as pulp, the film hit like a moral gut punch. Most reviewers of that period were baffled, but decades later, The Naked Kiss is hailed as a fever dream noir with a conscience, unfiltered, confrontational, and unapologetically raw. It's exploitation cinema with a barbed wire soul. Satan in High Heels. In 1962, Satan in High Heels strutted into theaters with a cigarette in one hand and a middle finger to the Hays Code in the other. Centered on Stacey Kane, a striptease performer turned nightclub schemer, the film carved out a niche in the sleazier corners of exploitation cinema. It was shot partially on location in New York City, including the Club La Martinique, giving it a raw authenticity that most studio backlots couldn't fake. Director Gerald Intrater didn't shy away from the grime. He embraced it, layering it with noir-inspired lighting, smoke-filled interiors, and a jazz score by Mundell Lowe, a respected guitarist who had worked with Billie Holiday. Some fans claim the film's stylish grime made it feel more expensive than its budget allowed, while others point to its daring themes as the real shock factor. Stacey Kane wasn't a damsel or a femme fatale. She was an early example of a female anti-hero in 1960s exploitation cinema, manipulative, ambitious, and entirely in charge. The film's flirtation with same-gender attraction, including a suggestive scene between Stacy and another woman, caused a stir under the still active Hays Code. Rumors even suggest that this subtext helped the film quietly resonate with LGBTQ+ viewers later on, long before mainstream media acknowledged them. Over the decades, Satan in High Heels has earned cult status, especially among critics drawn to its unfiltered portrayal of female power, however messy, transactional, or performative it may have been. It didn't just push boundaries, it danced on them in heels. The Curious Dr. Hump. Released in 1969 under the original title La Venganza del Sexo, this Argentine oddity was later rebranded in the US as The Curious Dr. Hump, a name as baffling as the plot itself. Directed by Emilio Vieira, the film followed a deranged scientist obsessed with extracting sex energy to fuel a twisted immortality experiment. But it wasn't the original version that scorched US grindhouse screens. American distributor Box Office International Pictures reportedly added extra adult scenes, ramping up the sleaze factor before slapping on a new title and unleashing it on late-night audiences. Legends tease that the added footage was shot without Emil's involvement, possibly in Los Angeles, and stitched into the final cut with little regard for continuity. The result? A Frankenstein of a film featuring masked henchmen, hypnotized abductees, and dialogue so awkward it bordered on surrealism. Reviewers tore it apart, viewers couldn't look away. Though dismissed at the time, it slowly developed a devoted following, proof that in exploitation cinema, incoherence and infamy often go hand in hand. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.